welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet Podcast, your guide to help you manage life, money, and multiples. Each episode, host Paul Fenner, Tama Capital's president and founder, and the proud parent of 4 amazing children, including 1 set of triplets, will provide insights on successfully sustaining an active lifestyle, career, and family through comprehensive wealth management strategies, financial education, and lifestyle planning, specific to parents raising twins, triplets, and more. Learn more, subscribe to the show, or connect with Paul at tamacapital.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of TAMA may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
How do you help your kids develop good money habits? How can you overcome the challenges that simply talking about money can bring? Bill Dwight, a lifelong software engineer, faced these questions while he and his wife were raising their 5 kids. So Bill did what any reasonable person would do facing a similar problem. He started his own company, a virtual family bank. FamZoo, the company Bill created, integrates prepaid card accounts with family finance software to help parents and kids develop responsible money habits through hands-on experience. FamZoo, short for the Family Zoo, which Bill said represented what he and his wife were currently going through, seeks to encourage certain money habits within kids, such as spending, saving, and giving responsibly. These are all tenets of Ron Lieber's book, The Opposite of Spoiled. Separating your resources into functional buckets is a skill worth developing for kids and adults. Bill, like myself, also found inspiration to help teach our kids about money through the work of David Owen in his book, The First National Bank of Dad. The premise is that kids learn best by doing, and what better way to teach sound financial habits than to let kids actually have control of how they use their own money. An unexpected benefit of helping to teach our kids about money is that it can help parents deal with their own issues surrounding money. In addition, it can create great conversations about money between kids and between parents and spouses. Be sure to listen to the end where Bill talks about his favorite financial parenting hack, which I totally support. Please enjoy my conversation with Bill Dwight. So Bill Dwight, welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet Podcast.
Hi, Paul. I'm delighted to be here.
And as I was saying beforehand, I can't thank you enough for your time because we're going to get into your business, FamZoo, but you're going through a major launch right now, and you carved off enough time for us to have this conversation. So I am more than appreciative.
Never miss a chance to talk about kids and money and parenting.
Well, I actually found you through Todd Adams of Zen Parenting Radio.
Yeah.
And when I had interviewed Todd, he's like, "Do you know Bill Dwight at FamZoo?" I'm like, "I don't know Bill. I think I've heard of FamZoo before." And he started explaining it to me. I was like, "Holy crap. Like, this is a question that I get asked all the time as a financial advisor when working with my families is like, okay, what are the tools out there that my kids can start getting involved in?" And like, I didn't know of any. So I kind of started my own. I call it the First National Bank of Dad after a book I read.
Yes. It's one of my favorite books.
Yeah. And
I actually read it after I created FamZoo.
That's awesome.
And many of the concepts are the same.
Well, we'll definitely have a link to FamZoo in the show notes into that book as well, since you're a big fan of it as well. I should know this, but the author's name slips my mind, but I think I've reached out to him before about trying to get him on. So I'll still have to keep working on him. But I think the best place to start, Bill, is at the beginning is have you walk through your background, who you are, and then let's take a really deep dive into how you started FamZoo and what it is.
Well, I'll give you the brief version. I mean, I'm 60, just turned 60.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. And so I've been in software since the early 80s. And so originally I thought I was going to be a tennis player. And then I fortunately realized that wasn't going to pan out as a profession. So I switched my racket for a keyboard. instead, and got really interested and excited about computer science, and it became something I just absolutely loved. So I've had the good fortune of working in software since the early 80s, and built all kinds of things. Worked for Oracle Corporation, which was a large database provider, and worked for lots of startups and the first wave of artificial intelligence back in the day, and on online marketplaces. I was a VP of engineering of Elance, which became Upwork. And
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know those two dots were connected.
Yeah, so I've really enjoyed constructing software throughout my life, and also I met my wife in school, and we got married the summer after we graduated, and we've created a pretty large family. So we have 5 children, and they're older now. But all those things sort of combined to form FamZoo when I decided that I was kind of done with my traditional career in Silicon Valley, and I wanted to do something that really combined a lot of my passions, and that involves software. So I wanted to see if I could build a company completely from scratch, getting back to writing my own software. And I love the idea of parents mentoring their children. And I had been searching for something to help my kids learn about personal finance, the oldest ones when they were in their early teens and tweens in the early 2000s. And I really couldn't find anything. And this gets back to your mention of the First National Bank of Dad by David Owen. And
yes, David Owen.
It's a wonderful book, and it talks about the concept of running sort of a little family bank where you kind of you teach all the concepts they're going to run into as adults, but you kind of simplify them and speed them up in time. And so the classic example is parent-paid compound interest. So instead of your kids getting a little bit of interest at the end of the year, maybe that isn't terribly compelling for them or meaningful in their timeframes, you juice it up and give them some really awesome interest that you pay as a parent, maybe every week or every month. And therefore, you're getting this reinforcement of the power of compounding in a time frame that a kid can appreciate. So if they're getting constant feedback every week, oh, you earned 2 cents in interest, oh, you earned 4 cents, 5 cents, $1, that really gets in their head about, compounding is very powerful. And of course, it's in a time frame that a kid can appreciate. Some people might say, well, they'll never get that in the real world. So why are you, doing something that's not, quote, real? And the point is to build understanding and habits. Yes. And often you can, once you build that habit, then, it'll stick even once they get out in the real world and get, terrible returns. In fact, it's kind of funny. Our youngest son, who's now 20.
And we should mention, let me interrupt for a minute. Yep. We should mention that you are in Silicon Valley out in Palo Alto, California. Yes. And your youngest son, for our Wolverine listeners, goes to the University of Michigan here in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
That is correct. And so since he's 20, he kind of grew up in this era of Robinhood and crypto and all that stuff. And so he was earning this Bank of Dad interest on his savings, which I thought was a pretty awesome return, weekly return, which was far greater than you get on a traditional returning asset. But then he got into Dogecoin and like doubled his money. And he's like, Dad, your Bank of Dad interest not that great. But then it cratered. So, right. So fortunately, with something like crypto, you can actually learn something pretty quickly, and look where it is today. So, yeah, very topical with FTX eating it.
Yeah, I was just going to say we just had the crypto winter, so
right, yeah. So anyway, it's just the idea is to kind of have a family bank where the parents are the bankers and can make the rules and do things in a time frame and a volatility that kids can appreciate and understand and learn lessons with. And that's a really neat sort of basic idea. And you don't need any special technology to do that. You could keep a ledger with a pencil and paper in a book where you keep accounts, faux accounts for the kids, and credit it with interest. And in fact, that might be a great learning tool because the kids learn to maybe compute their interest with them. You sit down with them. But over time, there's a reason that it's called FamZoo. That's short for my family is a zoo. So most of us don't really have time to kind of do all that stuff manually. It might be a good way to start. So I had built a set of spreadsheets for my kids where they were represented the kids' accounts, and the transactions were, if we credited them for a job that they'd done or allowance, and then we would credit them for interest. And then if they wanted to buy something, we would say, well, what's the balance in your fake account in the spreadsheet? And if you can afford it, then you can buy it. We would buy it for them, and we would decrement the amount in the spreadsheet. So, with 5 kids coming in saying, asking about spreadsheets, I'm like, all right, well, one weekend I just sort of built some software, a little website that they could sign in and see their own balances, so they weren't bugging me all the time. And one thing led to another. And ultimately, I realized, hey, that would be kind of a neat product for other families. And I can automate a lot of this stuff, and I can, instead of telling them they earned X, Y, Z in interest, I can automatically send them a text message. And so FamZoo was born around 2006. So August 2006 is when I incorporated FamZoo, and took a couple of years to kind of build out the software to the point where it could be an actual product. And so originally it was just a set of fake bank accounts where a family could set up a virtual family bank, if you will. Several years in, we were approached by a prepaid card company, and they said, how would you like to combine what you've done? Because they saw a presentation I gave at a conference, this conference called Finovate, which highlights financial technology. And so we were lucky enough to win an award there at Finovate. And so this prepaid card company approached us and said, hey, let's marry these two concepts. Let's make it so instead of fake accounts, they're real prepaid card accounts. And I was like, wonderful, because that really gave the kids some agency, right? They originally FamZoo felt like something that was done to your kids, like you've been right. FamZoo'd, bummer. But once you get a card with your name on it and you can actually transact, now that's motivating. So you couple that with parent paid compound interest and things like that. And so that's when FamZoo really became particularly compelling to the entire family, the kids included. And that was just over 10 years ago. So we've been issuing cards for quite some time. And, we built all kinds of features into it to encourage certain habits. So much like the multi-part piggy bank, you can have multiple sub-accounts. And so you might have spend, save, give would be sort of the classic 3 sub-accounts per kid, or you might have an expense account for clothing if you wanted to teach one of your kids how to budget. So, for example, my daughter had a clothing sub-account where she got an annual clothing allowance. And that was to try to help her understand what it means to manage a lump sum of money over a period of time. Now, she promptly went out and bought a Neiman Marcus chiffon gown and blew the entire thing in one fell swoop. Man,
she went big time.
But that's exactly the point. She remembered that experience better than any parental lecture, right? Because
yes.
She had to go cold turkey basically on clothing or shift funds from other accounts to cover it for the remainder of the year. So the whole idea is to allow the kids to learn through firsthand experience rather than boring lecture, but also to create conversations, like everyday conversations between the parents and the kids about money. And ultimately, that's the real goal. The objective is to get the kids and the parents really comfortable with transparent conversations about money, so that when they're older, like my kids are now, they're comfortable coming to me and having a conversation about a financial issue early before it becomes a big mess. I just want them to be comfortable. We can tackle the problem early on rather than it snowballing. And so that's really the concept, is to create those connections and easy conversations about money, and to really, like Ron Lieber says in his book. He has a terrific book, The Opposite of Spoiled.
Yeah, I was just going to reference that.
It's a wonderful book, has lots of very practical tips that you can pick and choose from. But he says every conversation about money is really about values, and I think that's a very insightful comment. That really, it does, when you are talking about money, which sounds off-putting initially, you're often really talking about underlying values.
I couldn't agree with you more, Bill, because it's interesting you made that point, because that's been a focal point of what I do as a financial advisor, is getting people to understand what their values and purpose are, either as an individual or a family, and then develop objectives from that, and then action items that support those objectives, that then it supports those values and purposes, rather than, I think most people have this stereotypical thought of an advisor just manage my money, stocks, bonds, whatever. And that's pretty much the opposite of what I do. And so I really like how you phrased that. And, the going back to Ron Lieber's book, Opposite of Spoiled, that whole trying to create habits with these kids around that spend, save, give mentality.
Yeah, I think that kind of separating your money and resources into functional buckets that are aligned with your goals is a real fundamental concept and skill. And so we kind of take for granted all these things that we that we learn by the time we're 50 and 60. And it's nice to have some framework to introduce those concepts really early on. I mean, I know I could have really benefited. I think my parents did a wonderful job of parenting, but I could have benefited quite a bit from some of these really basic concepts and understanding them earlier in my life. And so that's kind of what FamZoo is all about, is just trying to reinforce through everyday practice some of these seemingly simple concepts, but if you never learn them,
they're not simple.
Because you're not seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, money is so taboo topic wise, as you kind of alluded to, that it really, this really is a conversation starter, to your point.
And it also, interestingly enough, helps the parents as well, because it's a little tough to go set up spend, save, give buckets without thinking, what are my sub accounts and what are my priorities, and am I splitting my incoming funds between these functional buckets in a way that's aligned with my goals. And so there's this neat side effect that you're not only teaching your kids, but you're also kind of re-examining your own habits and cleaning that up. I know that certainly worked for me.
So one of the things I want to go back to, so I want to kind of go in two different directions, but let me first pull us back to another. I want to talk more about the go in depth with FamZoo and really how it works and some of some granular detail, if you don't mind. But before we go there, I want to go back, because we talk a lot on this show about life transitions. And so going from working in the corporate world to launching your own business, that's a huge life transition.
Yeah.
So what was that like for you personally, and then for your family as well?
I felt like a criminal. I mean, when you're used to, going into the office every day and working in a corporate structure as an executive or whatever, and then one day you end up just sort of staying home and working at home all by yourself. That's a big transition.
It's a big change.
I remember, going out like midday to get some coffee and looking around and feeling like I had to explain myself. Like, it's okay, I'm out here by myself, but I do work. I have a job. And so that was a big shift for me, kind of mentally and ego wise. Frankly. But what was so wonderful about it is that, as I mentioned, we have 5 children, and we have like a 6-year gap between our 4th and 5th. And so our youngest kind of never remembers me going into the office. And I was basically home every day when he would get home from school. And it was the most wonderful blessing for me, just to kind of, I like to say he's like an only child with 4 siblings. And just for me, it was wonderful because when we were raising our first 4, I was obviously very distracted by my career at Oracle and other places. And, always felt like it was a struggle to devote the kind of time that I wanted to the kids. And so this was just a wonderful, lucky circumstance where I had the resources to strike out on my own, and then the flexibility to do so. And then the ability to have that one-on-one time with our 5th child. I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, it's been a wonderful experience, but it was an interesting transition ego wise.
Yeah, no, I can relate to you, Bill, on 2 different levels there that you just pointed out. One is when I transitioned from corporate world to TAMA, I had a really hard time with being by myself. So I look to my left, I look to my right, I'm just surrounded by walls. And before, I'm a very hopefully engaging, outgoing person, as you might be able to tell. And that's one thing I liked about being in an office. I was, around people and engaging and traveling and things like that. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And so, I was pretty fortunate where, there's a group of other advisors that I would hang out with, once a month or whatever. We get together online and talk, and it felt, normal again. Yep. And then, similar to your situation, one of the reasons why Teresa, my wife, and I made the call for me to go into the business on a full-time basis is that we needed one of us to be home more for our triplets plus one. Yep. And I didn't think that was going to be me. I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not what I signed up for. But in all honesty, when I look back over the last 5-6 years almost that I've been doing this TAMA on a full-time basis, I've had the firm. Actually, I started the firm 12 years ago, the day that my triplets were born. But I have to remind myself often that these days are long and the years are short, because it's been such a blessing for the last 4 to 5 years of being able to get my kids on the school bus and off the school bus. And I'll look back at those times and think, man, I was really lucky, because I know a lot of dads, yeah, a lot of dads would, give anything to change spots with you. And my plus one, Mackenzie, is in 5th grade this year. And so last year of elementary school, and I'm trying to really soak it up, like, make sure I'm there every morning, getting her on the bus. I'm not as great getting her off the bus, because I'm like, oh, she can get home on her own. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're going to turn around. You're going to miss this. You're going to miss these days and these opportunities. So I completely know where you're coming from. And I think it's just a special thing to be able to have that opportunity.
Oh, it's incredible. And then fortunately, I was lucky enough to be able to hoodwink my my old Princeton roommate and computer science lab partner into joining me. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Chris Buford and I run FamZoo, and we write all the software together, and it's just like old times. And we've known each other actually one day longer than I've known my wife. So I met both of them. I met Princeton, both of them at Princeton, and I met Chris the first day that I arrived. We were the two Californians in the EECS department. That back in the day, there wasn't a separate department for computer science. It was just sort of grafted onto electrical engineering. And so, we've worked together on and off over the decades, but in the last, we've been working together, I think, for 12 years or so on FamZoo. So that's really wonderful. That made all the difference in the world. Most importantly, I mean, from a social standpoint and having someone to bounce ideas off of, and then he's an incredible talent, and he's able to he has no hesitation to tell me what an idiot I am when I make bad decisions. So I think it's made us a much better company, and it's been very fulfilling to have a good friend that you can work with on a daily basis. So it's really worked out wonderfully for me.
That's incredible. That's a good tie as well, because I didn't know that. Okay, so let's now pivot back to FamZoo itself. And can you I know you've kind of given us a high level view of kind of how it works, but can you take somebody, a novice? Obviously, I know this is a podcast, but people can't. I'm strongly encouraging people go to the site famzoo.com and check this out. But have you walked through like what the process is like for getting started and what a parent should be looking for?
Yeah, and by the way, there are several products in this area now. We were kind of the OG in this space. It is really a space that Chris and I created. Prepaid cards that are educational in nature. There are other products. There's Greenlight. There's Go Henry. There's Busy Kid. And so I just want to be clear to people. I don't, it doesn't matter to me what product you use. The concept is very solid in my opinion, which is that you basically allow your kids to transact and learn about money in a hands-on way with oversight from you. And so the way it works is you come to FamZoo and you start an online order for a collection of cards. And every family is anchored by what we call a primary funding card. It's like the parent wallet.
Okay.
And so you put some funds in that parent wallet, and that's the source for whatever system you want to run, whether you want to do allowance or chores or a combination, or even if they're teenagers and they have summer jobs, you can do direct deposit right to their card. So the point is, we don't try to steer you in any particular direction about whether everyone should do chores or I didn't get paid to do my chores, so no, they're bad. We don't have an opinion about that. We just have a toolbox, and you kind of decide what fits with your values and what fits with your individual kids. And you might do different things for different kids. My kids were all dramatically different, so we had different setups for them to kind of cater to their different personalities. So anyway, you come and you start an order. You have a primary funding card, might be like the Bank of Dad card, Bank of Mom card, and then you add children to the family, and you add any number of cards or sub-accounts for the kids. So you might add a child junior, and then you might add a spending card, a saving sub-account, and a giving sub-account.
I was just going to ask about that. So you've got 5 kids, I've got 4. So we got a lot between the two of us. So when you set up the main account, then you start adding the children. So let's just say Madison, for example, she's my oldest girl triplet.
Yep.
If I wanted to kind of follow that save, spend, give format, I would set up 3 different sub accounts under Madison.
That's right. Under each child.
Each child. Okay.
Yeah. If you wanted to have that. So, and then for older kids, you might want to at some point introduce them to the idea of an emergency fund. So you might have an emergency fund sub account, or you might have that a clothing expense account if you wanted to teach that lesson. So the neat thing is, over time you can add cards or sub accounts at any time. And so as they get, you might keep it real simple for starters. A lot of families just have one card, a spending card for the kid. And you can teach a lot of lessons there. I mean, heck, you can put a parent paid compound interest rate on a single spending card. You could put it on any of the card accounts. Think of it as a rewards card for not spending.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
And so the parent paid compound interest doesn't need to just be relegated to a savings sub account. You can apply it to any one of the sub accounts. And
so basically what you just said is you could create your own reward system.
That's right. That's right.
Wow, that's cool.
And then, families reward kids for all kinds of things. There's spot bonuses, thanks for helping out mom the way you did, boom. There's all kinds of opportunities to experiment, quite frankly, with reward systems and see if they work. And now it doesn't always have to be the carrot. It may be the stick. So for us, we had a set of chores that we expected the kids to do. And we also wanted to keep things simple. So we didn't really want to be checking off chores and stuff. And so we gave them a regular allowance, which is fully automated. So we can, get distracted by life and it'll just chug along. Yep. But we had a chore fail chart. So if they didn't do their chores, we could go in, and we got sufficiently irritated, we could go in and check off, did not make bed, and that would claw back funds, which is really interesting because a lot of behavioral economics people talk about loss aversion being stronger than, not. Yes. So like seeing getting your allowance and then you get dinged and it gets, clawed back, that can be very compelling motivator. It didn't particularly work that well for one of our sons who he just never would make his bed. And the funny thing is he became a U.S. Army Ranger. And,
man.
he finally learned how to make his bed.
You sure did.
Sometimes I'd like to think our incentive system, our disincentive system works, but sometimes you just need someone shouting down your face, I guess.
Other than mom and dad. Yeah, this is great. This is awesome.
But it's interesting. It's just kind of, so what we provide is this platform with all these features that you can kind of fine tune and experiment and see what works with your kids. And of course, what's appropriate for a certain personality or a certain age, it can change over time. So kids obviously go through a maturation cycle, and young kids, you might want to go kind of the pay for chores route, but then when they get older, they're going to get into things like summer jobs and paychecks and things like that. So you probably ditch the chore charts once you realize what a pain in the rear they are to maintain.
Do I know? It's a battle every week, Bill.
But then there are kids with various challenges where that structure can be very important to them. So we have a lot of families with kids with varying disabilities and things like that. And so it's nice to have that kind of broad toolbox because certain personalities need certain incentive systems or structure. And so it's neat to be able to kind of tune the system to the needs of the child. And some of our kids are octogenarians, meaning that often a parent will actually be helping to care for an adult their parents who may have dementia, and they want a safe kind of sandbox, financial sandbox for their parent. So that's been one of the neat surprises about FamZoo, is there's lots of use cases that I didn't anticipate. And family members at risk, whether they have drug addiction problems or cognitive problems or whatnot. This is just kind of a handy system to have oversight and safe transacting of money. So, again, getting back to how it works, there's this primary funding card, and you can move money between that and the dependent cards, either on a schedule like an allowance, or by checking off chores, or just by going in and tapping on plus and moving some funds as needed. Also, two fun things that we put in that I really like are, one, money requests. So kids can request funds, and so they go into their app, and they can't move money around, but they can request money. And then they fill out a little form that where they pick the parent, usually the weaker one, me, and then they make their plea, you forgot my lunch money or whatever. And then the parent gets a notification. They can tap on it. They can approve, partially approve, or deny, And so that kind of gets the conversations going. So some parents, instead of chore charts, they really want kind of their kids to learn negotiation skills. So instead of having the money delivered when you check off the chore, instead they tell the kid, well, negotiate your fee with a money request. So people use these features in ways that I hadn't anticipated. The other kind of request that we have is called a reimbursement request, and I put that in later down the line, because there are all kinds of things that I was willing to purchase for my children, but I wanted them to really understand how much the things cost. And so a reimbursement request is a little different than a money request, because it's after the fact. So maybe you purchase some shampoo or whatnot, and then you click on the reimbursement button, and you can request a full or partial reimbursement of an expense. And
so the kids are paying parents back, mom and dad back.
No, so the kid is having to buy it, and then they say, I'd like to be reimbursed for this expense. Okay. So let's say that my son Quentin, he's the fifth. Ran out of names, so we went with numeric-based naming for Quentin. Let's say he goes to Chipotle, and he decides that he needs to have 2 burritos instead of 1, and then he buys that, and then he launches a reimbursement request by tapping on that Chipotle transaction, which already cleared, and a little form pops up, and he says, "Dad, I'd like to be reimbursed $10 instead of the $20 that it was, because I ate 2 burritos, but you should probably only reimburse me for 1." Or he might try to get a reimbursement for the whole thing, and I'm like, $20? What are you talking about? Would you treat all your friends too? No way. I'll give you half. So there's this negotiation. But the neat thing is that kids are, even though you're ultimately paying for it, they're having to go through the process of paying for it, understanding how much it costs. And then the other beautiful side effect of this is that they have to maintain a decent balance, because they have to be able to buy it in the first place. So you're kind of forcing your kids to skate north of every teenager's favorite balance, which is zero. And so that was one where that's really ended up being one of my, aside from like parent paid compound interest, probably my second favorite feature, just because the kids are engaging in the process of understanding what things cost, what's a good value for the dollar, having a conversation with you about it, so you're going to have kind of more conversations than you would otherwise if you're just silently purchasing things. And so that was a kind of a fun discovery.
So going back, this is a little bit more of a technical question. So like these sub accounts, like I'll keep going back to this example of spend, save, give. Mm-hmm. Do each of those, are they like a bank account?
Yes, they are. They are a prepaid. Technically, they're a prepaid card account. So each of them are independent prepaid card accounts, FDIC insured. at our issuing bank, South State Bank. And
so does each one of those cards have an individual, or does each of those accounts have an individual card attached to it then?
Yeah, we a plastic comes with every sub account, comes along for the ride. Parents typically just hold on to the savings or givings card or the non-transactional cards.
All right. That was just so really where I was going with that.
A card gets pumped out. Okay. But they are separate individual accounts, and then our software is what ties them all together. So if you were to call the 800 number on the back of a card, they would know about the individual card account, and you might call them to reset your PIN or otherwise interact with them. But our software is the one that knows, oh, this is the savings bucket in a spend, save, give that belongs to, Quentin in the Dwight family, And so we tie it all together, and then our software provides all of those educational features, whether it's, splitting an allowance payment between multiple sub accounts automatically, the whole reimbursement flow, the parent paid compound interest calculation. So our software wakes up in the middle of the night when interest should be delivered and does the calculation and then does those credits. Our software sends out the text messages if you've turned on activity alerts. So, one of the key things we encourage parents to do is to say, hey, little Susie, here's your spending card. Now realize that every time you use it, I'm going to get a text message and you're going to get a text message. This is a great way to head off shenanigans at the past, by the way.
Yeah.
So you kind of say up front, you're going to get a text message. It's going to tell you what you just bought and what your remaining balance is. And, but so are mom and dad. And so, when we're always helping parents chase down mystery charges, so a lot of one of the things that's very different about our company is that it's a small privately held company. So it's self-financed by myself, and we have no outside investors, which is nice because we can basically focus on our mission. And our mission is education. So, when a parent says that, hey, there's all these unauthorized charges on my kid's card, we'll actually go check it out. And we'll be like, oh, yeah, actually your kid checked the box for Amazon Prime when they did the checkout at Amazon. And this, recurring charge that keeps appearing is because they checked that box. So here's how you go into Amazon and check. And now this can get complicated because there's multiple family members and we have visibility into that. So, sometimes it's little Johnny that used little Susie's card. Or in some cases, it can be even trickier to track down because sometimes the parent might actually add the kid's card to their Amazon, and then the family Prime is like hitting their card. So, we have all this kind of metadata that helps us, as we say, put on the parental detective hat. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One is we're not doing you any favors if you're kind of teaching your kid to evade paying for something they actually signed up for.
Right. That's the point.
That's an important lesson. And, they need to kind of learn to pay attention to their transactions and where the charges are coming from. They need to learn that, hey, you don't want to hand your card over to a friend and let your friend put your card in their DoorDash app. These are all important lessons to learn, and we'll take considerable time to help the parent sort of track that down. And those are, important habits to learn so that down the line, you don't get yourself into some real financial trouble.
Right. So selfishly, the other thing that's kind of going through my mind right now is this potential conversion I'm looking forward to, from going from Excel spreadsheets to an envelope with cash in it to online FamZoo style, if you will. Have you worked with parents about like what's that transition like from I guess real like the spreadsheet world, if you will, to like the online digital world, and these kids having their own card to use?
Well, it's a relatively straightforward transition, but we kind of forget a lot of the details that come with using a card. So there's a lot of basic education about, hey, there's a lot of numbers on the card. What do they all mean? There's, there's the number on the face of the card used to transact. There's routing and account numbers used for direct deposit, which are completely different. There's a security code on the back. There's the expiration date. There's an address associated with the card, so that trips up kids all the time. Like they'll get their address wrong, or maybe they're in a split household situation, so their billing address might be, mom's address one time, and then they try to use dad's address the next time. And so what we do is we put a lot of detail about why declines happen. So if your card gets declined, you can open up the app and you can tap on the red decline box, and it'll say, there's a PIN security block on your card because you entered the PIN wrong 3 times in a row, and here's what you need to do to correct it, or the address mismatch. And so there's a lot of things that we take for granted that are not obvious until you start using a card, and like how billing addresses work and how those match up and so forth. So those tend to be the kinds of things that you have to socialize your kid to. And it can be pretty intimidating for a kid the first time using their own card. I mean, it's exciting, but it's also like really intimidating, especially if they get a decline. So, we try to encourage, especially when working with the younger kids, like the parents should kind of go along with them for a couple of test runs, to make sure they're comfortable, like where do I put this card in the machine, et cetera. And now we're getting to digital wallets and things like that, where kids have the cards in Apple Pay and stuff like that. By the way, I should point out, for kids under 13, we cater to all age ranges. For kids under 13, the legal card holder is actually the parent. And so we have this custom label line that you can put a second line printed beneath the card holder's name. So for kids under 13, the parent name will be on there as a legal card holder, and then the parent can put the kid's name or Johnny's spending or whatnot on there, because we never want to collect sensitive information about kids under 13. So there's a COPPA compliance issue there, and then when they become teenagers, then they can have the card in their name, because that's basically when you become decidedly uncool anyway. So they don't want your name anywhere near the card.
True that.
But I just wanted to kind of point out that's how it works for kids under 13. It's what we call an on behalf of card.
Okay.
Everything works the same. Like they sign in, they see their transactions and all that stuff. It's just that legally the card is in the name of the parent.
I was just going to ask this question: is like how young is too young to get started with this?
Basically, as soon as they're asking for something at the checkout line, they're ready. And kids are very smart. They learn very quickly. And so it's hard to, in my mind, start too early. You might err by trying to do something a little too complicated too early, but kids get it pretty darn quickly, and some parents, especially when we originally started all this, they worried that, I want my kids to learn with physical money because it's more tangible and they're going to feel it more. And my feeling was that might be fine, really early on, but that's not the world that these kids are going into.
Right.
These kids
digital.
are going into a digital world. This topic doesn't come up as much anymore, but it used to be, like I say, we were kind of the first ones in the space, and people were like, oh no, like I don't want my kid just like, thinking that money can just be easily spent, with a digital payment or a card. And so that's why we have the things like alerts and text messages that say, hey, you spent this much and you have this much left. We try to put that sort of tangible feedback loop in the product. But the bottom line is, I want the kids to learn early how to manage digital forms of money, because that's the world they're headed into. And I'm not doing them any service by delaying that education basically, and let's get that education out of the way, when the stakes are low and all that. So that used to be kind of an issue, but now that a lot of venture-backed companies and so forth came into the space and run Super Bowl commercials, the concept is out there, and we don't have to do as much sort of educational advertising anymore. People get it; they know what the product's all about and kind of how it works. We used to have to explain all that.
Okay. Speaking of education, like if I go back, like, is there do you offer or provide on the site educational videos or tutorials, if you will, for parents on how to walk kids through some of these, habits and practical ideas that we've been talking about?
Yeah, mostly it's in the form of a set of blog posts that we point to in the product. And so, for example, a very popular post is like, here are the 10 numbers that your kid needs to know about the card on a debit card. Here's what they all mean. So it's a way to sort of systematically walk through the card. A kid gets the card and it reminds the parent, tell them what all these different numbers mean and what a pin is, how to pick a pin that's memorable but still safe. So classic thing is, think of a 4-word phrase, look at the first letter on the words, my dachshund is awesome, whatever, and then see how that maps to a number on your keypad on your phone. That's better than, your birth date or your birth year or whatever, right? And so just little tips and things that are either blog posts or short videos or things like that, we try to tie them into the moment. And so for example, if you get an address verification decline and you click on the red box for the decline, it points off to a blog post about what is address verification all about, what happens, there's an address stored with your card, there's an address that you typed into the merchant, and those two got to match up, and just how that works. So okay. The focus is really delivering the information in the moment, as opposed to study time up front, which as a parent, that's not a big
probably doesn't work very well.
Well, but the idea is ideally the product and the software deliver an experiential learning experience as opposed to having to read a lot of content or whatnot.
Okay. Well, Bill, I could keep going with you for another hour, but I know, like I mentioned at the get-go, you're in this full-blown new launch sequence, if you will. So let me get to my closing question.
I'm fine, but I think that our listeners probably couldn't handle it.
Oh no, I think they can. I think the listeners are going to really enjoy this conversation because, like I said, it's a question I get often and didn't really always have a solution for them other than here's what I do, via the David Owen National Bank of Dad and even the Opposite of the Spoiled Ron Lieber book.
By the way, I would. If you'll permit me, I'd like to share my favorite financial parenting hack that has nothing to do with FamZoo. And one of the things that I'm most happy and satisfied with is that we set up Roth IRAs for the kids as soon as they got their first W-2 paying jobs. And so I've done what's one writer called a family 401k sort of situation with all of my kids. And I don't like to fiddle around with nuances of tax law. So my rule was, as soon as you got a W-2 paycheck, we're going to open up a Roth IRA for you. And, dad's going to provide a very healthy match. What's appropriate for one family. In our particular family, I would actually gift them the entire eligible amount. In other families, maybe extended family might help with matching gifts or things like that. But this is such a wonderful construct because initially they're like, what's a Roth IRA, and so every year we would go through this habit of contributing what was allowable to the Roth IRA. Then you have to invest it in something, ideally, right? So you're going to have that conversation about investing. And that's where we talked about index funds. And although if you're really smart like Elon Musk and you happen to have shares of PayPal, then that's not a bad thing to put in your Roth IRA either. But, initially that was like a big yawner for them. And then, every year we would do this. And then as they get older, they get in high school, they're like, wow, that's like that balance is getting interesting. Then they get in college and they're like, wow, this is really getting interesting. And then they get jobs and they realize that you have been contributing to this Roth IRA and talking about investing every year. And I love it because it's got elements of everything. It actually, if you are able to make the maximum contribution that they're eligible for, can be a total life changer for decades down the road. It can become a very significant amount of money. You have to work to be eligible. So that's good. It's encouraging a work ethic, and it matches something that can happen in the workplace with 401ks and things like that, so that when they get their first job and the HR person says, do you want to contribute to this account, they have a clue. Right. They're like, yeah, I've been doing my Roth IRA since I was 15 or whatnot. And then it's delayed gratification, because I don't actually tell them that they can withdraw the contribution amounts before they're 68 or whatever. I just tell them it's got to stay in there until you're 68. So little white lies, not bad, right?
No, that's a really excellent point, because that's something that I've been doing with families I work with over the past several years. That's been a real big hit. And I've actually even done it with my kids. And what really got me excited about it was to see their excitement about learning about the investment side. And, I went the opposite of the index, where I let them pick their own stocks. I narrowed it down for them. And it was a lot of companies that they were familiar with, because the research I've read and seen is, when, especially at their age with kids, if they're familiar with that, they'll have an understanding and want to be more interested in it. So, that's an interesting topic. To
me, it's really important that they understand what an index fund is and what sort of passive investing is. And I personally enjoy picking stocks as well as sort of a hobby. But I didn't learn about index funds until I was in my late 40s, and I could have really benefited from some diversification away from some high tech stocks during the internet bust. So what we did with our youngest son was we did a kind of a combination. We did index funds, and then he picked a handful of stocks, and we kind of looked at how those compared. And so that was a great experience. So if you can do all that, the neat thing about an index fund is if you don't happen to have an interest in investing, which some of my kids don't, it's a perfectly great default investment. And so anyway, that has really worked out beautifully, because you basically end up creating a safety net within your own family very early on, and it's very tax efficient and has all these great properties, and it's an excuse to talk to your kids about long-term investing every year. That starts out as a real dud when they're real young, and then it gets more and more interesting every year. So that's anyway. I wanted to you already know about it, but I wanted to reemphasize it with listeners.
This is great, because I think it fits into, and hopefully the audience gathers what you guys are really about at FamZoo, which is about education and helping support families, which is what I do, and what this whole entire podcast, it's been going on a little over 2 years now, has been all about too. So. I greatly appreciate you bringing that up, because I know that's an interest that people have and have asked me about throughout the years, and I've set up many Roth accounts for these kids, and it's been terrific. But I didn't even get to probably half the questions on my list. So we're going to have you back after you get.
Or you do a rapid fire.
Yeah.
Keep it 30 seconds or less response.
I'm not good at that, Bill. But we'll have you back on after you get the software launch or update done for sure. So, but I do want to get to my closing question that I ask all of my guests, and this is going to be a good one for you since you've got 5 kids, which is, what is the best thing about being a parent?
Yeah, that's I saw that question in the notes for this, and that is a very open-ended question. But I was thinking that the best thing about being a parent is it just makes me a better human. I can't imagine my life without my wife and my kids. I can't imagine. It would be so much less rich. And my kids have taught me so much in terms of empathy and tolerance and expanding my narrow views about what does success look like. Our kids are all radically different, even though Selena and I think we're the same parents.
Nature versus nurture.
And it's just been the most amazing, wonderful experience to have a large family. We didn't either of us come from large families. And our conversations around the dinner table when we get everyone together are just an absolute hoot, because everyone's got different views, but we all have an incredibly strong connection. And I don't know, I just being a parent makes me feel like a full human being, and it's just very, very powerful. So then being a grandparent, now that is awesome. I can tell you, we have.
Well, don't tease us with that, because when I have you on, that'll be my closing question.
Because we have a grandchild. Down. That's got all the upside and the downside.
That's right. Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough for your time, and we'll put all the links in the show notes. But I greatly encourage our audience, and I know I've mentioned it to a few families already, that I spoke with, that I knew I was going to have you on the show to interview, to check out FamZoo, and I'm definitely going to get mine going this weekend, probably when I'm at a swim meet. So,
well, I appreciate it, Paul. And so folks can just visit the homepage, and there's a video that walks through how the product works, how to order the cards. And so I encourage everyone to just kind of check out the video, because that gives a good overview. And like I say, there are lots of similar products these days. And the big difference is with FamZoo, we're 100% focused on the educational mission. And if you contact us or you pick up the phone and call us, you're going to talk to either Bill or Chris. And so we don't advertise at all. And it's just word of mouth referral, and we intentionally keep it pretty small, just so we can give that really personal, hands-on attention.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, Bill. I can't thank you enough. And like I said, I'm already looking forward to that next conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Emotional Balance Sheet Podcast. Please visit tamacapital.com to subscribe to this podcast, or to connect with certified financial planner and registered investment advisor Paul Fenner of Tama Capital. And please join us again next time on the Emotional Balance Sheet Podcast.